So let's talk of this Puppet Enterprise again till the machine boots. Let me show you what's going to happen. We have got very different feature sets, right? On Puppet Enterprise, you would be having M Collective, you would be having pre-installed Hiera, you would be having a nice Puppet console. There would be multiple processes that are running in the background. So I will go through all the processes. I'll show you what they do. Okay, in the open source Puppet, none of that happens. In the open source Puppet, you would be only having the basic uh, Puppet daemon running. Okay, and that daemon is responsible for compiling the catalogs and compiling the manifest and sending you back the catalogs. That's what it does. In Puppet language, you're going to see if else statements. Okay, so the Puppet language is actually very easy to learn. It's not that complex at all, and very few constructs are there. There are no loops, of course. Okay, if everyone is aware of what resources are and how to use them, we can go on and learn Puppet language. So anything that I covered in the previous class, I would be requiring that as a prerequisite for the next, for at least today. Tomorrow we would be jumping to the new topic called chef. So let me see if it has brought up the machine. Okay, so machine is up. So we are using learning VM here. The credentials are root, password is Puppet. All right, so I'm here on my learning VM. Try to check the host name so that we want to set it up in the DNS. It's learning.puppetlabs.vm. Okay, so let's make an entry there. There is no ETH1, so I have to create ETH1. If you are on CentOS boxes, CentOS boxes have got their own rules for setting up ETH. The path is sysconfig network scripts. Inside this folder, you would be finding one script called ifconfig eth0. Copy that. In Ubuntu, we never did that. We only edit the entries in the interfaces file. But here it's different. Copy if config eth0 to if config eth1. I'm creating a new one. Then I'll be editing if config eth1. There it goes. eth0 becomes eth1. DHCP remains DHCP, NM control yes, IPv6 init yes, type Ethernet yes, on boot yes, UID and I'm not aware of it, so I will remove it. Okay, so if you do if up on ATH1 now, it should be able to bring up a new interface for you. Now it says it has determined the new IP address. Let's get if config, and there it goes. We have got ETH0, we have got ETH1. The IP address is 56.99, which I'm going to set up in the DNS. Okay, back to my DNS machine. So we are actually repeating all the steps that we have done twice yesterday. This time for Puppet Enterprise. It's okay. Now we are going to set it up in the DNS configuration. The file is at etc bind db.example.com. Now if you see that the domain name here is not example.com. In case of learning VM, the domain name is puppetlabs.vm. It's not example.com. So I will have to create another zone file that would take care of this for me. Okay, so back to DNS. If you remember what we did already with DNS, I'm going to create a new zone file in name.conf.local. Okay, so there is another zone file called puppetlabs.vm because I'm dealing with another domain here. Type master file is db.puppetlabs.vm. Open up that file, etc bind db.puppetlabs. Now this time it's not going to be example.com, it's puppetlabs.com, and learning VM sets up on IP address of 56.99. Okay, save it. Similarly, what about reverse resolution? Reverse resolution, it belongs to the same network class, so I don't need to create another zone file for that. I can place the IP address in the same file where all the others are placed. It's etc bind db.192, and the IP address for my Puppet is going to be 99 in ptr learning.puppetlabs.vm and dot again, since that's a absolute name. Save it. Service bind 9 restart. Cool. So that worked. Is it resolvable from this box? Let's set up the resolve.conf file. It says search example.com, puppetlabs.vm, name server is 56.2. Everything should work rather. And let's look up on DNS. Should give IP address too. Okay, that works. And let's look up on learning.puppetlabs.vm should give IP address 56.99. Okay, so we are all set. Let me try it one more time from the client end whether it is able to resolve. So I'm on the node and I would be doing ns lookup on learning learning dot puppetlabs.vm. Okay, that works. So this node 1 was first belonging to some another puppet master. Now we want to make it talk to some another puppet master again. Okay, make sure you have got the package installed called puppet apt-get install puppet. So that's it, that's there. And set up the configuration file which is at puppet.conf, if you remember. Okay, the server we have set it up puppet.example.com. I'm going to change it. This time it's going to be learning.puppetlabs.vm. Go save that. Also remove any of the certificates from the previous puppet master. Certificates are kept at var lib puppet /ssl everything. Simply remove it. Okay, so we are all set to talk to new puppet master. Again, the command puppet agent -t would help us create a certificate for the first time. So that worked. Okay, I will not sign the certificate here on the command prompt. You already know that how to do it. Let's get back to browser and open up Puppet's console. So this is the browser. On this browser, we need to access a page called https IP address 192.156, sorry, 168.56.99, and that would take you to the Puppet's dashboard. It looks like this. So what you will be doing next is to type in the credentials that you have used during install. If you are using the pre-installed copy here of Learning VM, you would be typing in the credentials as admin. The password is Learning Puppet. And there you go. So this is the dashboard in Puppet Enterprise where all your nodes are listed. There are options here on the top. Events would be showing all the runs, agent runs on the nodes. Nodes would be listing all the nodes on your machine. The dashboard that we are looking at actually is the nodes panel. Classification would help you to set up classes to nodes. The same thing that we did in site.pp file. We are now going to do it here on the front end. Okay, entries do not get reflected in site.pp. They would be stored in database. This database that Puppet uses in enterprise is called Puppet DB. Reports would be all the run reports that happened, how many resources were installed, how many of them were changed, how many of them were not modified. Inventory search, access control, and live management all work on mcollective. So whenever you try to do an inventory search, that means if you want to search some nodes based on some facts, you would be doing inventory search. Access control would be for creating new users to access this dashboard here. Since we are running it on one single CPU core, it could be a bit slow. Okay, so you could create administrators, operators, and viewers from here. And in live management, again, which is exclusively dependent on M collective, you would be having nodes listed here on the left hand side. Currently, there is only one node, which is Puppet Master himself. Okay, we are going to add few more nodes, and on this live management tab, you could control the Puppet. That means you could enable the Puppet agents. You could run the command. You could run the deployment scripts as well. Okay, so I was talking of this, that you would be able to um, install some packages, disable the Puppet service, enable the Puppet service, or execute the scripts like deployment scripts on the machine real time. You don't have to wait for 30 minutes cycle for that. And how do you do it? You would be invoking a single Puppet run that should be taking care of deployments for you. Again, so that's the cool part here in Puppet Enterprise, which is not a feature on open source. Let's do one thing. We would be adding nodes, classifying the classes to the nodes, attaching them. Here on Puppet Enterprise, we will not be using site.pp now. Getting back to basics, we have generated a certificate request. Okay, I told you that we will not be signing the certificate request from the backend, but we are now going to do it on the front end. Front end, here at the top, you will be looking at one node request. Okay, it says one node request at the top right. Click on it. It would be bringing you to another page, and on this page you would be having all the certificate requests listed. If you want to reject them, you could reject them. If there are hundreds of them, you could accept them all by clicking on accept all. So I'm doing just that. I'm clicking on accept all for now. It says node request has been accepted. If you refresh the page, it would say no requests are there for signing. Okay, pending node requests are 0. All right, so let's get back to the node and execute the command puppet agent -t and see what happens. It is trying to configure itself. But what about the module? Which module would be installed here? None. Actually, we haven't configured any module to work with it. So let's do one thing. The current status of node.example.com is has not reported. It has not executed the Puppet run itself. The report has not been sent back to Puppet Master, so it will not be do any analysis. It will not be able to do any analysis on it. So meanwhile, I would be installing a module on this box on Puppet Master. For installing module, do Puppet module install. Get one module from the internet. I would be using one, or write our own manifest. Doesn't matter. Puppet module install. Module name is again example 42 hyphen Apache. That's what we did yesterday, right? But today our target is not to install the pre provided module, but to write our own module, which is also generic, at the same time learning about the Puppet language. So let's do it. I wouldn't be installing the module here, but I would rather go to HC Puppet Labs. I told you the path is going to be different. Okay, so if you want to know it, you could take a note of it. In open source, the path is HC Puppet. In here, the path is going to be HC Puppet Labs, and inside Puppet Labs, you'll be finding a subfolder called Puppet. The reason for this change is Puppet Labs hosts a number of different applications other than Puppet. So if you see this folder in Puppet Labs, you would be finding multiple applications that are running in background of Puppet Enterprise. There is ActiveMQ, there is authentication console, there are console services. Now these consoles are actually the dashboard backends. Then there is installers, mcollective, Puppet, Puppet dashboard, Puppet database, and Puppet server. Lot many processes running in the background. All these processes can be visible here in etc init.d. If you jump here, you should be able to see all these services. So there are a lot of services listed with PE in beginning. PE hyphen belongs to Puppet Enterprise, and there would be one single service for every folder that we have seen. Okay, Puppet Enterprise console services, Puppet Enterprise HTTPD, which is a web server hosting this dashboard there. PE mcollective, PE memcached. Memcached is for storing in-memory stores data for mcollective. Then there is PostgreSQL, which would be required for setting up Puppet DB. Puppet DB is a process that would be taking care of storing data to Postgres and fetching it back from it. PE Puppet is actually Puppet open source. That's the only process that have been taken from Puppet open source. Okay, it is exactly the same as in case of Puppet. Uh, I mean Puppet open source. Then there are Puppet dashboard workers that work in the background of the dashboard. The console that you are looking at, Puppet Enterprise console here on screen, dashboard would be working at the back end, these workers. Then there are Puppet server, which takes care of all of these services. So this is a parent process. PE Puppet server is actually a parent process that takes care of all these processes together. So if you restart Puppet server, all of those processes would be restarted. Okay, let's get back to the path. Path is at C Puppet Labs. Inside that, we are concentrating on Puppet for now, and there are multiple files, just as in case of Puppet open source. Nothing different. The paths for storing modules are going to be different, of course. The path is not etc Puppet modules or etc Puppet manifests, but it is going to be inside the environment. Okay, so the path is etc Puppet Labs Puppet environments production, and inside production you would be finding multiple folders called manifests and modules. All your modules go to modules folder. Your site.pp would be in manifest folder. So let's cd to modules. We would be building our own module with the same process, of course, creating a boilerplate. Puppet module generate, and my module name is web server. It would ask you a few questions. Actually, Puppet Enterprise has got other way of publishing the modules. It would create the modules as if you want to upload it to Puppet Forge. Okay, so it would create a small metadata file based on the answers that you provide here. I would go with the default answers which are provided. Because I don't have any source code repository or I don't have any website currently, I would leave it empty. It is asking about to generate this metadata. Do you want to continue? Yes. So it has generated a module for us. Let's see. Okay, so there is a module again, the same thing. Rename it so that only module name remains. Okay, done. So we are all set here in our new module. CD to web servers, you'd be finding multiple folders in here. So manifest folder would be holding all your manifests like we did yesterday. Then there would be a spec folder that holds test cases for the libraries. Currently we are not using any dependencies, but just in case if you do. Tests would be holding the test cases for your manifest. There would be another folder called files in which we are going to dump our live code because we want to integrate that with Jenkins. So let's do it. Open up in init.pp in manifest. There would be a class file which is already present, class web server. I would be adding some code. At the same time, I would make it generic. Okay, so I wouldn't be writing directly here. I prefer to work on the client side first to test whether the code would work or not, and then the final version would be moving to um, the enterprise Puppet. So let's bring up another machine which we would be treating as developer machine, and on this developer machine we are going to write the manifest. We already did that yesterday, but the manifest was not good enough to be generic. Okay, we cannot use that same manifest on rel machines or CentOS machines. So here it is. Go inside of it, sudo su. Ensure that package puppet is installed. Get install puppet. Okay, so that's there. Example.pp is already there. Let's modify that example.pp to make it more generic. It says install the package, install the service, and set up the file. Okay, that's okay for now. But what about making it generic? It has to be flexible enough. Okay, so let's do one thing. I would say that if the service, if the operating system is CentOS, do something else. Okay, what else thing that it would do? The package name is going to be different, right? In case of CentOS, the package name is going to be HTTPD. In case of Ubuntu, the package name is Apache 2. So what I'll do is I would change all of these things using an if else statement. Okay, so we are writing an if else statement in here. Let's follow all the factor keys. You're aware of the factor command, right? If I hit factor, it would be generating all the facts about this machine, and all the keys that you see in here on the screen would be available as inbuilt variables, all of them. So how to use it? Let's see. If expression, okay, the body starts with a curly brace and it would end with a curly brace. So what I'll do is I'll simply tab all of these inside my if structure, or even better, what I could do is I will not push this up. I would simply set up a variable for myself. So this is my if expression and the body. That is the structure of if. If you want to extend that, you could also type in else if. Okay, again an expression and the body. Else part is not mandatory. You could mention else as well. In our case now, we need just if else. If my operating system is Ubuntu, do this. If my operating system is not Ubuntu, do that. So let's do it. I told you that all the variables would be available as inbuilt variables, whatever is coming in as factor keys. Variables name starts with a dollar. It's just like using variables in PHP, if you know what I mean. It is if dollar whatever your variable name is. So we have seen yesterday that the operating system variable exists. So I would say operating system. So if my operating system is equals to Ubuntu, all the regular comparison operators would work. So here I'm typing in if my operating system is Ubuntu, do one thing, get the name of package, or I would say my web server is equals to, that would also work. My web server is going to be Apache 2. Okay, if my operating system is equals to Ubuntu, then my web server is going to be Apache 2. That's what this means. I don't need the else if block. I'm removing that. In the else section, My web server should be equals to HTTPD. Only those two packages are available with Apache. All right. So if this is Ubuntu, install Apache 2. If this is something else, install HTTPD. But how do we convert a package service and file to talk to that? Well, where we have got hard-coded Apache 2, I could simply replace it with the variable that we have just created. The variable name is web server. Similarly for the service. Okay, let's go and hit save, and then I'm going to check it by typing puppet parser validate. Validate what? Validate example.pp. No errors, no messages. Okay, so let's try to apply it. Puppet apply example.pp. If everything goes right, it should compile and finish. Good, no errors so far. I would manually remove Apache first and they'll try to execute it again. Apt-get purge Apache 2 and execute example.pp again. Puppet apply example.pp. Okay, so there's an error. I'll tell you why this error is. It says that service Apache 2 could not evaluate and could not find uh, init script for upstart conf file for Apache 2. So what is happening here? It says that Puppet has actually tried to enable the service before even package was installed. Are you getting it? So Puppet has tried to set up the service before it has installed the package. So what's happened here? Let's fix it. There is another construct in Puppet language that helps us in setting up the order. Currently we have not set up the order. We have let it all at Puppet's will to choose the first block and start executing it. But now I want to be very specific. I want to say that, okay, I want package to be installed first and then service to be set up. So what I'll do is, there are two different kinds of dependencies that you could build. First is direct dependency. Another one is notifying dependency. There are a few keywords that we would be using. Keywords are before, require, subscribe, and notify. And these four keywords are called relationship meta parameters. Okay. So these meta parameters we are going to use, and we are going to make sure that service always executes after package. So let's see how to do that. If I mention in package that I want to execute it before the service, when you reference the service, this time you are going to make it as uppercase. First character should be uppercase, service, and the service name was not Apache 2, it was web server, right? We are going to be generic this time. So the package web server is going to be executed before the service web server. You could do the other ways. If you don't want the attributes to be present in package, you could place it in service. You could say that the service should be requiring or require package. Again uppercase. And since we are creating a generic manifest, we will be using variable. Okay. So require and before would go hand in hand. So they simply complement one another. If you don't want to place this in any of these blocks, neither in package nor in service, so you could create an external dependency by using arrows. And these arrows are called chaining arrows. So I would say package, whatever value is in the variable web server should be set up before service web server. That would take care of before and require for you. Okay, and you don't need to place those attributes inside your resource definitions. You could place it externally. What about the home page? Now the home page always has to be present after the service is executed, or you could place it between package and service. It still works, but never before the package. So what we would be doing is we would be creating another chain, and I could say place file here in file name, whatever the file name is. This is only created if you have dependencies on the order. If you don't have any dependency on the order, feel free to execute any block anywhere. Now there would be some cases when change in one of the resource should be triggering a status change in another one. I am talking of status change. I'm not talking of a complete install and uninstall. So the example would be if a configuration file changes, the service should be restarted. So whatever the status of it is, it should be flipped. If the status is running, you'll have to make it stopped and then again make it running. Okay, so to restart the service, if you want to flip the status of it, in that case you would be using two another keywords, which are subscribe and notify. So let's do one thing. We don't have any configuration file now. We would be depending on the file attribute here. If my file changes, my service should automatically restart. So let's do one thing. In the service tab, I could say subscribe. Subscribe to what? Subscribe to a file whose name is something like var www.html/html.index.html. So this is my file name. If anything changes inside that file, so this service resource has now subscribed to the changes in that file. If the file state changes, then the service would be restarted. That's about subscribe. If you want to notify someone, so if file changes, it would take care of notifying. Notify, notify whom? Notify the service. And what is the service name? It is in the variable called web server. Make sense? So subscribe and notify would be complementing one another. If you don't want to place subscribe and notify inside the blocks, you could happily take them out like we did for the require and before. And the chaining arrow that you would be using here is something like this. I would be depending my file on package, and the file would be triggering the service. So it would be something like this, a tilde sign with an arrow. Okay, I know that's a little weird. That doesn't even look like an arrow, but it's what it is. It's not going to be hyphen and greater than sign. It is going to be a tilde and a greater than sign. Then we would be typing service. Make sense? So file will not be executed before package, but when file is going to be changed, service would be triggered. So let's see if it fixes the problem for us. Save it and then puppet apply example.pp again. Okay, so package was installed first, file was created next, and after the file was created, the service was triggered refresh. There are three notice logs there that you can see. Very first, the package was changed from purge to present. Then the file was created, and when the file content changed, it triggered the service refresh from one of the events, which is file change. Well, we have seen to make it generic, but we have not bundled it up. You could do one more thing. Instead of using if else, I would show you what are the other options that we have. Other options that we have are like this. Uh, I would be changing it to the case statement. So I could simply say, let me write it down here, then we would be commenting it off. If you want to comment it off, there are two ways to comment it. Either you use hash or you use slash star that you already know would be commenting multiple lines at once. So I've blocked that part and I would be writing a case statement. So case, the keyword is not switch, it is case operating system, which is a variable. So pass a variable to the case statement and then your values. Initial value, it's Ubuntu, right? If it's Ubuntu, then colon, then in curly braces, you'd be mentioning what has to be done. So in my case, I want web server to be taking value as Apache, Apache 2. Okay, that is one code block. Another one, if this is CentOS, then again colon. Web server is going to be HTTPD in that case. If I have multiple values, so I wouldn't be adding another row here. What I would be doing is CentOS comma Red Hat. For both of these options, you need to execute this code block. That's what it means. If none of them matches, in that case, we have default, which is the keyword again. And you could place another code block here that would be taking care of your web servers. I would say web server equals to Apache 2 again, because that is going to be a Debian system. So it's all up to you how to set up the things. Okay, but these are the options that you have. Does it work? Let's check. Puppet apply example.pp, compiled, finished, no changes because the system is already in that state. Great. What are the other options? Other options are, we could use a selector statement. Since we are using a variable and I just want to set a variable inside my case block or inside my if else block, I would rather use a selector statement for that. So I've commented this block as well, and the selector statement looks something like this. Web server equals to, based on operating system values, remember that there is a question mark, and a body. This is completely different syntax than you might have seen. So if the value is matching Ubuntu, in that case, separator is not colon, here the separator is arrow. If it is Ubuntu, then return the value which is Apache 2. Okay. If it is Red Hat, or again you could place two values here, CentOS, then in that case return HTTPD. You would also place regular expressions in case statements as well as in if statements as well as in selector statements by placing double slash. So what it means, let's say we are getting away from the example with this explanation, but would make sense later on. If you have multiple nodes and instead of operating system you are using a variable called hostname, okay, and you want to set up different packages based on what the host names are. If the host names belongs to node and backslash d, that means node 1, node 2, node 3, node 4, and so on, you would be installing some another package. If it belongs to web server slash something, you would be installing some another one. So I could write regular expression for that. So if something comes in for node 1, okay, so that's my regular expression. You would be installing some another package, right? If it comes for some another one, you would be placing some another one. So you would be writing comma another line for web server. So it depends how you write the regular expressions in here. They are placed in slashes. They are not placed in quotes. I don't need this for now. There would be a default option as well, which would help you pick up the default values. In my case, the default should be Apache 2 and again the comma. Okay, so that's the selector statement. Let's see if it works. Save, quit, puppet apply example.pp. Okay, so we did some mistake here. Let's fix it. It says could not parse for environment production syntax error at comma expected a curly brace on line number 17. Okay, so let me do one thing. I'll be removing this altogether. I should have placed it inside a regular expression instead of that. Or better even, let's place it in regular expressions. So regular expression would look something like this: slash red hat or CentOS. Okay, either it is red hat or CentOS. In that case, it should be HTTPD. Does it work? Yeah, that worked just fine. So what we have done until now is we have simply gone through a few of the constructs. We have seen if else, we have seen case statement, we have seen selector statement, we have seen the inbuilt variables, how to use them. We have seen custom variables and how to use them. Okay, and in the process of learning these things, we have also made our manifest a generic manifest. Okay, so of course there are many resources out there, so you'll have to check documentation for getting all these resources out and then use them according to your requirements within your manifest. We have seen that the comments can be placed by star and hash, star and slash, and single line comments can be placed using one single hash. So I would call it as generic template. Okay, so if you want to add something to the node, if you want the node to be implemented with some package, so what you'd be doing? We have already done this inside .pp. I'll repeat it again. Node, the node name, of course the fqdn has to be placed, then the curly brace, and then we write include class name, whatever the class is, right? In our case, the class name is web server. It doesn't have to be placed here, it has to be placed inside .pp, but just for reference. Okay, what else we could do? We could bundle it up into a class definition so that we could refer it with a single name. So what I'll do is I would convert this into a class. How do we write a class? It would be class, okay, and class name. So our class name is web server. Classes are singleton in Puppet. Singleton as in you could define a class just once. Okay, in a module you could define a class just once and you can have only one reference to the class. So this is not object oriented programming, but everything that you write is an object here. So only one object can be created of a class. That's what. Resources can be multiple. You could place in multiple resources inside the class itself. So what I'll do is I'll simply tab it because it would look good to read. It becomes a bit tricky with classes because when you declare a class, like when you declare a resource, you actually also allow the resource to be executed. But when you declare a class, classes are not executed unless and until you initialize them. Okay, so that's my class definition in there, and I would be closing the curly brace. So this is my class. If I save it as it is and make some changes on the system, so I would say remove Apache 2 on this machine. Okay, just remove it. And like we have done earlier a lot of times, if I hit Puppet apply example.pp, we are expecting to get the package installed. But would it work this time? It would not. It would not install the package. Why? Because like I said, we have just declared the class. We have not initialized it. So how do I initialize the class now? For initializing the class, I would need to include it again. So I would say include web server or require web server. So there are multiple ways to do it. Include web server or require web server. Okay. Or I could say class web server. The syntax is a bit different. In declaration, the syntax is different. So you could see it here that in declaration we have mentioned class, class name, and then curly brace. But when we are using it, we have the keyword class, which is followed by curly brace directly, and inside the curly brace we have written the class name. So this is exactly same as the resource declaration actually. Familiar syntax, right? That's the resource declaration syntax. Why do we use resource declaration syntax and when do we use it? We use it when we want to pass parameters to the class. Currently your class is not accepting any of the parameters, but you could make your class accept some parameters, a few of them. How to do that? See, when we have the class name here, you could follow it by parenthesis, and in parenthesis you could write some parameters. Okay, and that parameter you could pass. If you want some default values to be set to the parameters, you could set it like this. So my parameter 1 would be having value 111. Okay, if you want to place multiple parameters, you could place it like this. You could also extend it onto multiple lines if one line is not enough for you. So I'll keep it on 2 lines, even better, looks good. Okay, so parameter 1 is 111, parameter 2 is 222, and so on. Okay, so you would be placing multiple parameters here if you want to. If you want people to be passing parameters to your classes while using them, you can ask them to do so. So here I have declared 2 parameters and I want people to pass the 2 parameters. If they are not passing it, in that case default values would be picked up, but I could pass the parameters like this. In the class definition, I could not do that with include and require. I could do that in the resource type declaration of class. So while calling a class, I would say that alright, parameter 1, please set it to not 111, but it should be 555. Okay, and how do you check? There is a function called warning that you could call in here. So what I'll do is, before doing anything, we would simply give a call to warning function, which looks like this: warning, warning. In parentheses, I would be simply passing the param1 because I want the value of it. It should be just throwing that value out on the screen as warning. And it would be in red, so it would be more visible. Puppet apply example.tpp, it says uh, hire.yaml not found currently, not a problem. The second warning, if you see, it says scope class web server is giving out a value 555. That means the parameter that we passed actually got reflected there. Okay, so we have also passed the parameter and it was reflecting here. If I don't pass the parameter, in that case we should get answer as 111 and not 555. So remove this part here, not required at all. I would also keep away the colon, save it, execute it again. Okay, let me see what's wrong. Yeah, so the definition is wrong here. There should be a colon present. Go on and execute it now. So the scope class web server now, the second warning that you see, would be showing value as 111 instead of 555. All right. So what I'll do is we will quickly edit this class to take correct values so that we could port it to Puppet Master and implement it there. Okay, whenever you create a module, you never initialize the class after the declaration. Initialization has to be done in either one of the manifests, which would be the another manifest that you would be adding, or it could be done in site.pp. You never initialize it on the same location. You can place it in the tests folder. Of course, I'll show you where to check it. Currently, this is my file which I want to send to my Puppet Master. So what I'll do is I will simply do scp copy the file, which is example.pp, to another machine with some credentials. Root at the rate 192.168.56.99 is what the IP address is. If I don't remember the IP address, you could simply do Puppet, right? Does it work from here? And let's look up on Puppet, not Puppet, it's learning, right? Learning dot puppet labs dot vm. Does it work? No. Off it goes. Let's check again. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply do scp from the current machine example.pp to root at the rate learning dot puppet labs dot vm. At path, I'm going to place it in tmp for now, and from there we would be picking it up. Okay, so our example.pp goes to temp. Hit enter. It would try to connect. Say yes. It would ask you for the password. You know the password already, and it has copied it over. So does it exist on Puppet Master? So let's check. cd2/tmp lsl. We should be having another file there called example. Is it there? Can you see it? Yes, the first file on the first column, example.pp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this inside our module which we have just created. So the module was at location etc puppet labs puppet environments production modules. Our module name is web server. Inside web server we are going to place it in manifests. So let's get back to this folder location, which is etc puppet labs puppet environments production modules. Module name is web server. Inside web server we need to be inside manifests folder, where you would be finding two files now. One is example.pp, another one is init.pp. What does example.pp contain? The same thing that we have written right now, with a class web server into it, and there is no initialization of it. Similarly, what's there in init.pp? Class web server, but the class web server is empty. So why not to simply remove init.pp here and rename example.pp to init.pp? Makes sense, because the class name is going to be same. So my init.pp looks like example.pp now. Okay, looks good. So where do we place the initialization part? We place the initialization part in the tests. So there is a folder called tests at the same level as manifests. Okay, so there are multiple folders. We have already seen them. We were inside manifest. Now I need to go inside tests and write the declaration for myself. So I would be cd to test. There would be again a file called init.pp. Now this file is not the regular manifest. This is just the testing file where you could write anything that you want to test. Okay, so what I'll do is I would open up that init.pp, and here you would already see that it has already written a line called include web server. So all your class initialization or anything that you want to test with your modules should be placed inside the tests file. Okay, so far what we have did is we have created a module which is generic enough. We have learned about Puppet language, and we now want to implement that onto a particular node. So yesterday we have seen that we could modify site.pp file and write the node definition and set up the file there, but let's do it from the front end. So all these things have to be done on the back end. Either it would be Puppet open source or Puppet enterprise. So this is my front end. Go to the classification section where we would be classifying the nodes to be of a special group. Okay, so we have it here. There are multiple groups which are already created, and there would be a few machines which are part of these groups. If you see closely, all these groups belongs to one or the other application group there. So either it is ActiveMQ or it is a certificate or CA authority, console, infrastructure management, master, M collective, and Puppet DB. We will not be messing up with these predefined groups. But what we'll be doing instead is that